how to be safe includes having a set of first aid tools in your fire safety kit, which is one of the things that I talk about. Personally, I am less a fan of burn cream and more of a fan of Second Skin. Second Skin is a moist burn pad that hydrates the wound. So the reality is what's happening when you get burned is you're dehydrating. And the reason you form blisters is because it puts the hydration between your layers of skin. If you put a moist burn pad on it, the moisture from the pad gets sucked into via osmosis, moving from an area of greater concentration to lesser concentration. The water goes through your semi-permeable membrane into your skin and helps offset the burn. So as long as you haven't broken skin, a burn, like a sunburn, is a burn, right? If you put a moist burn pad on a sunburn, it will alleviate some of the pain. If you've gotten to a place where you've broken skin, then it's a little bit more, it depends. And I would have to assess it before I would give I wouldn't give a universal recommendation once you've broken skin. Depends on how deep it's gone, depends on how many layers of skin, depends on how big the burn is, depends on what fuel you were using, depends on how black it is, it just depends on a lot of things. But even, the worst burn I personally have witnessed was a student of mine at a jam that was a silent disco where we were wearing headphones. And he hadn't spun out enough, and his poi caught on the headphone, and a whole bunch of fuel, excess fuel, went into his ear, on his ear, and down his neck. So he had a huge burn. And fortunately, my dance partner got him out fast, but I wasn't actually near him when it happened. I was across, really far away on the other side of the plaza. And somebody's like, Isa, come quick. I'm like, what? They're like, Will burned himself. I'm like, wait, what? And so I run across the plaza, and the biggest thing that was happening that was absolutely horrible was everybody was freaking out. They're like, we have to go to the hospital. I'm like, okay, you all need to step away and let me handle this. Because everybody was freaking out. I'm like, okay, first of all, a hospital's not really going to do much for you. What they're going to do is they're probably going to give you a painkiller, and they're probably going to give you some version of a moist burn pad, and they might give you some cream to put on it as well. If, as soon as you get burned, if as quickly as, and what I happen to have burn pads with me, because, per my recommendation, I like to go spin and have my burn pads, which expire every 6 months. You need to re-up them, even if you didn't use them. What I did was I took all of the burn pads that I had, and I covered them over. I'm like, what you need to do is go to the drugstore, get more moist burn pads, cover it up with the pads. You'll probably need to change the pads every 4 hours or 6 hours, but they will last longer the further into the healing time you are, because it'll be more healed and it will be more moist naturally because it will have healed more. I was like, and take pain relievers, and then, you'll be okay. And he was like, the next day he contacted me. He's like, thanks, we took care of it. And then he was spinning fire again 2 weeks later. And he has no scar. But it was a bad burn, and it was it was in his ear, it was behind his ear, it was on this part of his neck, it was this part of the ear too. It was an intense burn, but he was fine. Just he thanked me later for saying, for being the person that was there and being calm with him. So the number one thing I have to say to all fire dancers is, you are your first line of defense. If you burn, you're it. You're your first line of defense. Stay calm. You have a ton of adrenaline flowing through your body at that point in time because you just got burned. Do your best to stay present. Control your breathing and get moisture on the burn as quickly as possible. And I don't think I've talked to people who say you don't want cold water because it actually puts it in shock. You want room temperature water because that's actually better. And the moist burn pad will be room temperature. So those are my recommendations. But yes, you would want to have something in your kit. Cream can be useful, I guess, but I think a moist burn pad will immediately solve more than cream will. But that's an opinion. I'm not a doctor. A doctor may say something different. Just in my personal experience, the moist burn pad, when I branded myself, I intentionally branded myself at Burning Man. And when I branded myself, after the brand, we immediately slapped the burn pad on it. And I didn't have the kind of pain that other people who hadn't done that had. And it was okay, I know what I'm doing. And I did it because I wanted to know what it was like to have a third degree burn so that I could give my students like real life, okay, yes, I've intentionally burnt my flesh to a third degree point so that I know what that is, so that I can tell you from firsthand experience. So like the moist burn pad worked wonders. I didn't need a hospital. I mean, yeah, it was painful when I moved, but it was like it was covered, and if you keep it moist and you keep it covered, I will say I went through like the moist burn pads in 90 minutes to 2 hours at the very beginning. Though it was that dehydrated, so you want to have a lot of them on hand, but you want to also manage that against the fact that like they do expire, so you don't want to have so many of them on hand that you end up throwing them out because they're dehydrated.